Hi, welcome to Old Testament Tuesday. This week I am in Second Chronicles, and this morning I read about Solomon completing the temple and having the priests bring the ark from the city of David into the temple, and as well as installing it in the Holy of Holies, as well as all of the treasure, all of the items needed in worship, the vessels, everything that was put into the treasuries. So chapter 5 just kind of describes the process of putting everything in order. So all of the leadership of Israel is gathered together, including the Levitical singers, the harpists, the trumpet players, and it was the duty of the trumpeters and singers to make themselves heard in unison in praise and thanksgiving to the Lord. So you've got to picture this. The temple is, everything's overlaid with gold. Everything there's these ornate carvings, and now we have the musicians and singers all gathered together, and they are making a joyful noise. I mean, a very loud noise. There were a lot of them, a lot of trumpeters, singers. And so as they're worshiping, their main praise chorus is, "For he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever." Their celebration is for God's chesed. Chesed, H-E-S-E-D, is the transliteration of that word. That Hebrew word chesed is God's steadfast love, his covenant-keeping love toward them. And Solomon begins to pray. He begins his prayer with praise. He says, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who with his hand has fulfilled what he promised with his mouth to David, my father." And then he goes on to say, to humble himself, he's on his knees. He says, "But will God indeed dwell with man on the earth? Behold, heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built?" So he is starting with a declaration of his humility, that as glorious as the temple is, he understands that God can't be enclosed in his temple. Then he says a series of prayers that all include the phrase, "Hear from heaven, hear from heaven." This is a king, who understands that he's engaging with a God that is real, a God that listens, a God that sees, a God whose eyes roam around the earth looking for those whose hearts are wholehearted toward him. So as he's praying, he says, oh Lord, hear when your people, when we pray from this place, or even when foreigners come and pray from this place, will you hear from heaven? Will you keep your eyes open? Will you keep your ears open to hear our cries? Because we understand that when good things happen, it's because of you. When bad things happen, it's largely because of our sin. So he says in different ways, when we sin and there's no rain, would you forgive and bring the rain? When we sin and we are taken captive by foreign nations, would you hear from heaven? Would you forgive us and would you return us to our land? When there's blight or locusts or mildew or any other calamity, would you hear from heaven, forgive us, cleanse us, and remove the peril from our lives? Would you hear from heaven? So he is declaring that temple as primarily a place where intercession and prayer and supplication would be made, with the expectation that God is listening. So after he finishes praying, fire comes down from heaven and consumes the sacrifices. They had made hundreds of thousands of sacrifices of animals, and the glory of the Lord filled the temple, and the priests couldn't even come in and minister because the glory cloud was so thick. So this This is one of my favorite Old Testament stories because it's just so evocative. I mean, it's just such a picture of a people putting things in order, asking God to accept what they had done, and then hearing God's response to their offering. And God's response is quite exuberant also. And part of that response is a very familiar verse for many of us, where he says, "If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven." I will hear from heaven. You've asked me to hear from heaven. I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. Now my eyes will be open and my ears attentive to the prayer that is made in this place. Thanks for listening. I hope that blesses you and that you can let your imagination take you there and spend some time in the glory cloud.